Hi everybody, my colours are all on the left hand side and I'm going to tell you what brushes I'm using as we move through the video. So to begin with, I'm going to use a 2B pencil to do some guidelines. Usually I try to start with the largest areas first, and in a landscape that's more than likely going to be the body of foliage, grasses and skies. My surface is Arches 140-pound cold pressed paper. It's dry to start with. I'm using my dagger brush and I'm going to use a drinking straw as well. By working on a dry surface to begin with, I usually end up with much cleaner, crisper colours. Now while this paint is quite wet, I get down fairly low to the surface and I blow with a drinking straw to make some fun marks. Now I'm adding a little bit of Windsor blue with quinacridone gold. But because my paper is still dry everywhere else, apart from a spatter occasionally, it's going to stay nice and clean and white. Essentially, all my paintings are about leaving a lot of white paper, as you will see. Don't be too quick to take out the whites. I've said it before and I'll say it again, they're your saving grace for any watercolor painting. And as I go through the painting, you'll see me roll my number 8 brush, a damp brush, into the wet paint and sop up some of the water, and that just stops anything from getting out of control with big puddles. I'm just pre-wetting the sky area now, even if it goes over some of my pencil marks where my trees were going to be, that's okay. But I figured this is a fairly large area and I do want to get rid of some of that white paper. So using my dagger brush, mostly on the side of the brush, I start weaving in some of the yellow and then the cadmium orange. The dagger brush is wonderful for this because the hairs are so long that you can get a fairly wide stretch of paint moving at one time. Now I dry my painting. I gradually work from the background forward and I'm isolating the tree trunks as I go. My colours are a mixture of quinacridone gold and a little bit of Windsor blue. Now I'll use my thirsty brush and I'll remove some of the pigment from the back bush to give a little bit more depth. And I work with the foliage in this manner all the way across my painting. A little bit of cad orange and quin gold added into that. Moving my way closer to the viewer so my values can be a little bit stronger as I go closer to the foreground area now. And here's where I can start getting a little dramatic with my colours. They're still analogous colours and I'm introducing the opera rose with a little bit of cobalt blue. Sometimes I add more cobalt blue to the mix and sometimes I add more opera rose. So amongst all the green, I'm adding a little bit of cad orange with quinacridone gold, perhaps a little bit of the lemon, the Hansa yellow as well, but just keeping the colours so that they all harmonise together. And while it's so wet, everything bleeds together. It looks rather wonderful when they all merge. Now this is still Opera Rose, and I've added more of the cobalt blue to it. Look at that. Isn't that pretty? And that still works really, really well with the colours that are there beside it. Now this is essentially a mauve over the top of a yellow, and one would think that that might create a mud, but my yellow underneath is not saturated. It's a little bit damp, but not that bad. And as a result, the two colours don't have a chance to cancel each other out. So I end up with quite a nice result. So now I switch to the bottom left-hand area and start working the colours through there. And while these areas are still wet, I can flick other colours into them and let them merge. I plan on making this side not quite as deep in value. The heavy side of the painting is going to be, hopefully, on the right-hand side, and the lighter side is going to be on this left-hand side. Dragging a few trees or limbs out from that mass. And section by section, as these areas start evolving, I can start splashing in other colours, and you might think they would create a bit of a problem by merging together, but there are so many bright, cheery colours going on that it doesn't give the painting a chance to get a dullness about it. And this is how your colours, even though they're a wild mix of colours, when you first see them, they'll all start pulling together and becoming one, hopefully, one happy family when the painting's finished. If you start with a really dull colour like a brown, and you're doing a tree trunk, for instance, it's just going to be dead, or a rock or something like that. Don't just do brown for rocks and trees. Start with orange or yellow or pink, and then start putting the browns over the top of that colour. So you've got little peeps of those beautiful colours showing through. If you start dull, you're going to finish dull. That's my motto. So take heed. The bright, cheery colours with moderate intensity are going to keep your painting fresh. Still using my dagger brush and using just cobalt blue within the water, allowing some of the dry white paper still speckling through, which gives it a freshness. I'm very aware of leaving enough of the white within the water area to create some sort of a passageway to get to the back line of the painting. I don't try and take out all the whites within that water. It doesn't mean my river's got lots of rapids in it or something. It just is a design thought for me, on my part, that I want the white to be the area that carries the eye through to the back. Getting closer now to the foreground area immediately in front of my viewer, I need to adjust the darks. I've put a little bit more blue with the mix here, establishing a bit more depth because this area is closer to the viewer. So there's going to be a lot more interest going on with shadows and colours and even some linear details. All of those are going to be a little more concentrated in the foreground area. Now, a lot of very traditional watercolourists would probably have painted the whole river area in one fell swoop and even left out a lot, not even left whites, they just would have made it all blue. And that's a personal choice. That's totally up to the artist in charge. I prefer to leave it with little fragments of these whites, just using a thirsty brush to take out some of the marks within the water now. Now, using the violet colour, the blue-violet colour, as a connecting colour so I can get the right-hand side of the painting to connect with the left-hand side, I start pushing that in behind some of the bushes at that back line area. Now, I'm a colorist and I love using colour, but for many people it's a bit scary. And all I can say is that you have to work with the colours that you feel comfortable with and see how you go with it. I personally have painted so long that it's all intuition now. I just intuitively go on until it looks good. But that's not going to help you if I'm trying to instruct what I do. But I do think we all have an intrinsic sense of design as well as colour, and we use colour differently. Everybody does. So what I see in my paintings, in my colours and my mix of colours, is not something that everybody's going to see. I think you should stick to the colours that you like and that you know and you feel a little bit more in control of. To be safe though, I'd stick to analogous colours and perhaps one complement. And in my case, this painting is really a cool painting with the complementary colours of, say, an orange gold offset to the cool colours. Working up now to the cobalt blue and the upper rose and merging that in amongst these green areas. Beautiful colours to work together. And I just help along the water area right on the edge with a little deeper value of the blue mixtures. These are things you could do after the painting is completely dry as well. Just selectively and strategically place some of these really pretty colours into the white areas especially. Or, just weave some of the background yellow sky into some areas. It ties it all together. And before I paint my trees, I'm ready to start closing in on some of the whites within the grasses. So just doing a light wash of the yellow with a little bit of cadmium orange into it. So while the right-hand side of my painting is cooking, I'll go back to the left-hand side and start doing a little bit of palette knife work. Just using the side of the palette knife occasionally to create some sort of other debris or rocks in amongst the bushes. Time to get my tree trunks done now, so I start with a light colour and work my darks into the trunks. And I remove a little bit with a thirsty brush occasionally as well. Gradually building up my darks now in the foreground as well. And people often ask me how I get my darks so dark, and there's no secret to it. I just use dark complementary colours. For instance, if you use burnt sienna, which is a red-brown, and you use Windsor blue or French ultramarine blue, that's a really good mix. Or a dark magenta colour and a dark green. So this kind of mix with dark complementary colours will always give you some wonderful luminous darks. I'm using my colours more intensely now because this is right in the foreground. So as this foreground area comes into focus, I start splattering paint. I use my brush to make the marks. I use some much bolder colours, as you can see, and I use the drinking straw again. And now, taking advantage of some of those nice little white areas, I pop in a bit of magenta to give a little bit of brightness to the area. Now it's really just about refinement and pulling the painting together. And the last part of the painting comes with the big trees on the right-hand side, just getting more foliage on them now. And I think I'm done. I'm ready to sign this painting, and I thank you for staying with me. I hope you enjoyed it, and please join me again. Bye-bye for now.